This is the final Word Cricket Podcast, Season 19, Episode 26. Monday morning, Adam Collins in London. Monday evening, Jeff Lemon in Melbourne. Boy, oh boy, what a day it has been. We usually record these on Tuesday, but what's going on in the subcontinent with Pakistan boycotting their World Cup match against India deserves immediate conversation and interrogation. Australia happen to be in Pakistan as well. Well, they're not anymore. They've lost their T20 series. We'll go into that. Then we'll jump over to Sri Lanka. So much more on that Harry Brook story. And England in pretty good nick heading into the World Cup on the field at least. India go wild on New Zealand in a very high-scoring series. South Africa go wild on the Windies. Anti-corruption stuff in the States. T10 shambles in Malaysia. Jason Gillespie's going back to Pakistan. Greg Shippard's been sacked. Plenty more as well, not least the fact that Sophie Molyneux is the new Australian full-time women's captain, women's qualifier, WPL business end. It is going to be one of those types of shows. And I'm wearing my Australia jacket because it's World Cup season and because Emma John is joining us to talk about Australia in our regular Tourism Australia segment. Hello, Jeff.
That is indeed the entire show. We probably don't need to record it now. A show that will be brought to you by Maurice Blackburn, the number one plaintiff law firm in Australia. Yes, there are other things going on, but we're in the middle of it now. A few hours ago, the Pakistan government, not the PCB, but the Pakistan government, sending out a social media post saying that they will boycott not the tournament, but just their match with India, which is not very forward-looking if you're hoping to make the knockout stages of competition where you might have to play them again. But there hasn't been anything formally from the PCB. There's already been a response from the ICC saying, basically, please don't do that. That would be a very bad idea if you did that. And yes, it would be a very bad idea if they did that because the entire financial engine of the tournament is underpinned by the fact that India will play Pakistan in a game. If that game doesn't happen, then primarily, the TV broadcasters will say, give us several $100 million back because that's why we pay this money for the rights.
Shit's getting real. I mean, we knew that there was that 2 February deadline, which is today, the Monday, but on the Sunday, the tweet that went out, the Pakistan cricket team shall not take the field in the match scheduled for the 15th of February against India. Of course, that's meant to be in Colombo because they've got that agreement through to 2027, which was arrived at last year when Pakistan wasn't seen as a safe place for India to play in the Champions Trophy. We've had a Women's World Cup played on those terms as well. We even mocked it last week about the prospect of Pakistan pulling out. Now, who knows what might happen because there will be a response from India and that'll be funneled through the ICC. But this is fascinating. Like, to what extent do India now push back and all the things you said, probably more as well, NOCs and participation in future tournaments, how it might affect their standing in, say, the World Test Championship, what it might mean for bilateral cricket. All of these punitive measures are in the gift of the BCCI right now. Do they choose to go all in and beat the shit out of Pakistan into submission? Do they try and cripple them financially? Do they try and isolate them entirely from the global cricket apparatus? That is an option to India right now. But it's a really important point in all of this. Have Pakistan just showed in this transaction, in this tweet, how powerful they can be as the smaller party in all of this by simply withdrawing their labour against India? It kind of shows the whole straw man of the financial model of ICC global events, doesn't it? Which extends to associate nations. It extends to the distribution of funds across all of the members of ICC. So there is far more to it than it looks, but yeah, what happens next? It's going to be a fascinating couple of days.
This is very different, I think, to what Bangladesh have done. Bangladesh have absented themselves from the tournament entirely, which means that they can be replaced by another team. Now, if Pakistan pulled out of the tournament entirely and got replaced by another team, that would also have financial ramifications. But they're saying, we will come and play the tournament, but we're not going to play it in whole. That's a different level of dicking about. You've got obviously the political tensions between these countries going back decades and decades since their very beginning, right? And there are people who've been hurt in the course of this dispute, and they're real people. They are real people who deserve to be treated with high regard because of what they've suffered. But the governments of both of these countries don't give a shit about those people. It's never about the actual people who've been harmed in the conflict. It's about the posturing. It's about waving around of flags. It's about political advantage, political grandstanding, trying to garner domestic political support. All of the chest beating, all of the carrying on now leads to this thing where it's going to fundamentally undermine the integrity of the competition. Whether it's the PCB, they probably don't have as much say in this. It sounds like this is coming from further up the chain, even though the PCB and the Pakistani government are pretty much arms of the same operation as well. But to say that we're going to pick and choose, we're going to partly participate but not fully participate, that has no integrity. It has no logical integrity as a stance to make. If you're saying, oh, we're going to stick up for Bangladesh because they were unfairly treated, that's not a reasonable way to go about it, to jeopardize the entire project for everybody else who is coming together in good faith to try to play the tournament. That's the real weakness of this Pakistan position, and it is untenable. They don't have a leg to stand on here, whereas I think the Bangladesh board and the Bangladesh government had some reason to take the stance that they did. This one is a very different one.
I think the fact that it's been building for a pretty long time now. I haven't played bilateral cricket since, 2008. And of course, there's reasons for that. But it's a long time where the relations between these countries have been soured in a cricketing sense. And you're right about government influence. The difference now is that it's so explicit at both ends. It's so explicit with the way in which the Indian board and by extension ICC is run by basically a political party. But the same is true of, as we know, the way that Pakistani cricket runs. And as a country, it's been compromised by dramatic political instability, and grandstanding in this way can curry favour domestically, politically. That's clear too. However, there'll be millions upon millions of cricket fans who will be mortified at the idea of Pakistan not playing in this tournament. But equally, there would have been millions upon millions of Pakistanis who would have been mortified at the no handshake situation last year, for instance, and how demeaning that would have been to them. So a chance to leverage wider antipathy towards India, seen through the Bangladesh example, in this way, that might be in some counterintuitive way a positive thing in Pakistan, although I think the jury's out on that. It's about Bangladesh initially, and that's been the reason given as the one supporter of Bangladesh in their attempted stand to ICC last week, but it's so far wider reaching now. The ICC statement about hoping the PCB would consider the significant long-term implications for cricket in its own country, and this is likely to impact the global cricket ecosystem, which SELF is a member and beneficiary of. That's clearly true. The financials are now front and centre of this conversation. You know, we make the joke about how this game, this one fixture, underpins so much of the financial stability of cricket, which is totally insane that it is the case. But think about the way the distributions might be changed. Think about how it might affect the cut for associate nations who are desperately relying on the increased windfalls that they earned out of the deal a couple of years ago. As skewed as it was towards India, there still was an increase for associate nations built into that. So how do they respond to something like this? There's a lot of mouths to feed with that distribution. And what about Geo? Geo only a couple of weeks ago there was that statement from ICC, joint statement from memory, saying that all was well with those two parties. But as the ICC's international broadcaster, ICC Events, what if they say, too much volatility in this, we're out, or we're going to try and renegotiate our terms? That too would have a massive flow-on effect.
Well, it's also the cost of telecasting the tournament to begin with. No one game is any cheaper to broadcast than any other in terms of the TV trucks, the technicians, the time, thousands of hours of labour probably once you put together the number of people who work on these broadcasts. The reason they're putting that money into broadcasting Oman playing Namibia is because they've got India playing Pakistan. That's where they make the money back. It would be reasonable to impose that on Pakistan and say, well, if you're going to pull out, then you've got to pay that out of your share, which would tank Pakistan's distributions from the ICC revenue. There is a possible point of Pakistan sort of saying, well, okay, we're gonna potentially take everybody down with us, and we've got this one bit of flexibility. But the one country that could survive Pakistan pulling out of world cricket entirely is India. They want the money. They like having the money. They take the lion's share of the money from ICC distributions, but they're the only country that doesn't actually need it, that doesn't specifically rely on that distribution as their major source of revenue. Australia and England could scrape by. Every other country, that is their main payment. That is their meal ticket. Everyone relies on India playing Pakistan, except for India. So Pakistan don't actually have the power in this situation. They're only going to hurt themselves by doing it. Hopefully they back down, but having gone so strong on it to begin with, there'd be a whole loss of face involved with that, which makes that seem fairly unlikely.
It feels like they're going to need FBI level negotiators to sort this out.
Yeah.
Because Pakistan, it depends how you define their self-interest and whose interests are you defining in that. Is it the 11 guys who are going to take the field? Is it PCB or is it...
It's not the players. The people running it couldn't give a shit about their players.
If you go all the way back and consider the political interests of those who are running the country at the moment, is this almost nihilistic approach to cricket, burning it down to watch India squirm, is that incentive enough? Like, does that do what they want it to do? I know it acts against their financial self-interest. You're absolutely right in saying that. But does it serve their political interest to do that, especially at this time of heightened volatility? That's the bit that's unclear, because how could we know? It's more about what they're thinking internally on this, whether they've put this statement out yesterday as, it's been done on the government's Twitter account, right? There's no letter that's gone to the ICC as yet. Whether this is done as like the ultimate negotiating position, or whether they actually are keen on letting the world burn, at least financially, and allowing there to be a lot of collateral damage along the way. You do see that from actors at certain times when they decide that the thing that they can do to best serve their interest is ruining everything. That's not without precedent when you think about sort of global affairs. So it's really difficult to predict what's going to happen next. You'd like to think it's a negotiating position at some level, that this is an exercise in Pakistan saying enough is enough. This game is a shambles in the way it's administered globally, the way that we are technically a federation of members, of full members around a table, 12 of us. In theory, they should be all even, when in reality, we all know that it's anything but that. Whether this does create any change, but I can't see it happening, because for any change to occur, it would require then the Indian government to accept what Pakistan is saying on that front. And that seems, well, it's virtually impossible if you accept the direct link between cricket, the BJP, the BCCI, and the ICC being broadly one and the same. Then why would India ever concede any point to Pakistan at this particular stage? So this is really, really messy.
And it's brinksmanship. It's a few days before the start of the tournament. I think it's a piss weak position from Pakistan to take if they think that they're actually going to be able to show up and play in the tournament and not play this game and get away with all of that. Like, that's not going to happen, because...
Well, they're going to get kicked out. Let's be clear. They'll get kicked, and they've signed a piece of paper. They are party to all the same financial ramifications of what Bangladesh have done. It'll be worse for Pakistan. They've signed that agreement, that there is no legal way out for Pakistan. However, they can be booted. You can see it, can't you? You can see that dramatic twist where Pakistan are denied
replaced by Jersey,
get replaced at the last possible moment to humiliate them. And look, maybe they're braced for that as well. Maybe when you are in such a position of weakness, all you can do is try and drag as many people down with you as possible. Maybe that's how they see themselves, even though they're not that, right? They are important to the story. They are an important full member nation. They are crucial to the financial health of the global game. They're not as weak as maybe they're implying with this statement. I don't know. It's really difficult to unpick.
I have no time for this move from Pakistan. It's desperate, it's pointless, it's nihilistic, and it's affecting everybody else for their own sense of pride.
Given USA's in that group, they're also a compromised team going into this tournament, because you might look on paper and say, well, the USA made the second stage last time. They defeated Pakistan, but they'll be going into this T20 World Cup without Aaron Jones, who was instrumental to beating Canada when we were there at Dallas a couple of years ago to get the party started for America on home soil. But the hero of that tournament is now under the pump. He's been banned by the ICC from all cricket relating to, you'd never guess it, but a 10-over tournament that took place in Barbados under the control of Cricket West Indies. And I mean, it's been a week of T10 tournaments being scrutinised, but the man who's in the middle of all of this right now was someone who was quite important, crucial to the USA being credible at the last World Cup. And now they're in a group where they have a bit of an opening. Maybe it'll be compromised yet further by this.
He made runs in their win over Pakistan as well. Aaron Jones, he was the standard setter. It was an out-of-the-box tournament for him. His career to that point hadn't hit those heights for the most part. But yeah, he's suspended at the moment. He's under investigation, but it's for the whole slate of things, for contriving to fix games, for failing to report approaches, for refusing to cooperate with investigations, for destroying evidence, all of the charges. And it tends to be the case with the ICC integrity unit that at the point where they charge you, they've pretty much got you. Like, you tend to be banged to rights by the time they actually announce the charges, from what we've seen historically. So, yeah, he's in a real bad spot, put it that way.
It just feels like So many times our conversations on this program, Jeff, are led by these really, really sad stories about the direction of travel in global cricket. And Jones is a symptom of that.
And I mean, I wonder where Pakistan's positioning leaves them vis-a-vis other boards as well. So something like Australia sending their T20 team to Pakistan to warm up, that was a gesture of support. There was so much talk around the Test tour in 2022 about Australia going back, first time in 24 years, blah, blah, blah. And it was significant that this T20 tour barely excited comment because it was, an Australian team's going to Pakistan, whatever, that's normal. They do that now. I'm sure they did send people over to do their due diligence, but there was no angst about it. There was no background concern for the players. And that felt like, here's Cricket Australia backing Pakistan as a board that is under pressure from the Indian board a lot of the time and saying, we will tour you, we will engage with you, we will continue friendly relations. How friendly would the boardroom at CA be feeling towards the PCB right now for threatening to destabilise and potentially collapse the entire tournament and the funding model that's keeping most of the other boards afloat? There is some goodwill, or there was maybe until 24 hours ago, towards the PCB, and they might have just tanked all of that too.
Yep. And in that series, you mentioned Australia have been absolutely annihilated. Two of their fixtures, the second and the third, are their biggest losses ever in T20Is. They're not warm-up fixtures in the way that ICC put on some practice matches. They're more than that, but they did have a distinct feel of warm-up in the way that Australia chopped and changed with what they were doing. But going into the World Cup, we learnt today Pat Cummins isn't good to go. Cummins missing the World Cup. I'm not saying that they expected him to be there day one of it. There was always the sense that he might come in for the latter stages, but he won't be there. Ben Dwarshuis will get the opportunity instead. Poor old Matt Short found himself on the ledge at the wrong time. He's been replaced by Matt Renshaw instead of Steve Smith, and Renshaw's had a stinking T20I series. He made his debut in the series, but the last two games, he looked absolutely nowhere, not giving himself an opportunity to get in at all.
Yeah, so there were 5 players who were supposed to go, who were Cummins, Hazelwood, Maxwell, Ellis, and Tim David. So Nathan Ellis, Tim David, Glenn Maxwell have gone. Cummins has been pulled out. Hazelwood hasn't gone yet, but will supposedly go later so that he can finish up a few more days of rehab at home. But they've sent Sean Abbott as cover in case Hazelwood doesn't come up. Obviously they have a pretty modest bill of requirements set out before them in the group stage, with Sri Lanka the main other competitor in their group. But it's a team that doesn't have a great feel of cohesiveness about it.
A few of the particulars. So they were rolled for 108, then 96 in the last 2 games. That's a real bother for them, I'm sure. After falling short at 146 for 8 in pursuit of 168 in the first game, after Zampa picked up a 4 in that loss. But that second game, Pakistan got 198 for 5. Salman Agha, the captain, 76 from 40, finding form at the right time. Usman Khan, a quick 50. And then Australia all out 108. Green, 35 from 20. But the real story, when he holed out to Usman Tariq, he intimated as walking off that he chucks it. Pretty clear. I reckon Usman Tariq is going to be one of the storylines of this competition. A 28-year-old, a bolter of sorts, an action like I've never really seen before. I've seen sidearm bowlers, of course, famously, Lasith Malinga, but the way he kind of approaches the crease so wide of it, and the way he gets to it before the really low slinging action, almost like a baseball pitcher, an underhand baseball pitcher. He's had issues with his action pretty much everywhere he's gone, but not by the ICC as yet. So at the moment, he's good to go. But you can guarantee that once people start watching him bowl in a World Cup, this is going to generate lots of interest. But Green making the throwing motion when being dismissed by him, as it always does when a player does something like this, it looks no good. If Pakistan don't get booted out of the tournament entirely, will be one to watch over the next couple of weeks.
Well, he's an interesting one. He says he's been tested plenty of times and he's got a weird elbow and it just looks like that. But it's the way that he almost stops before bowling the ball that really draws attention to the arm coming around at about shoulder height. So who knows? People are very inclined to be judgmental about throwing when the human eye has its limitations. So I like to hold fire on those kind of things to actually work out what the biomechanics are. What does the University of Western Australia say?
Yes.
Get him in there, get the dots on him, get the T-shirt. But look, he's been cleared, and he said he was cleared easily as well. It wasn't like he had to watch out for certain deliveries or anything like that. Who knows? We need to get hold of his arm and give it a wobble and see what happens.
Yeah, it just looks so weird, doesn't it? It's such a weird thing to see.
And that might just be
it out of context. Well, if you watch it out of context, you might think he's never played cricket before, or he's new to the game. He's like learnt cricket later in life.
Yeah, he looks like an American playing
Yeah.
pub cricket or something, trying to figure it out.
Now, Abra picked up 3 for in that match, such a dynamic wrist spinner. Then in the third game, similar method really, Pakistan batting first, 207 for 6. Saeem Ayub, 54 from 37. Then Babar Azam back in good nick, 50 not out from 36. Shadab Khan, quick runs towards the end. And then Australia, all out 96. Muhammad, the much aligned Nawaz, with his left arm orthodox, 5 for 18. Good on Mo Nawaz there. Boom.
The wonderful wizard Nawaz.
Yeah, I've always been a fan, but he absolutely cops it online whenever he doesn't do well, believe you me. Usman Tariq didn't play that one, interestingly. So he played the game, had all the scrutiny, and didn't play the third one. Double fails for Renshaw and Marsh. Green gets runs or starts in all 3 games. Stoinis got a start as well, but yeah, all pretty wobbly. The truth, though, is that with the expanded World Cup of 20 teams and having them in groups of 5, which I fully support, it does mean that the full members who are strong, systematically, structurally strong, have soft starts to the tournament. So that means that Australia playing Ireland and then Zimbabwe to begin, something quite remarkable would need to happen to drop either of those fixtures. Then they play Sri Lanka, the other stronger team in the group, and then they finish with Oman. And then sort of the real tournament will begin for Australia, and hopefully for their sake, by that stage, they've got their machine cranked up to where it needs to be.
In Sri Lanka at the moment is Harry Brook, captaining England's white ball team, who a week ago was giving his press conference to apologise for going out and getting drunk and getting whacked in New Zealand, and then a week later was giving his press conference to apologise for lying about what happened when he went out and got drunk and got whacked in New Zealand. Are you team cover up? Are you like, yeah, they should have covered it up? What's your, like, did your political training come in and you went, oh, maybe they could have got away with that one?
I still feel like I did last week when I said, I reckon had they come clean before the Ashes, like, where was the upside from a comms perspective going clean on this as they're kind of flying into Perth? The initial cover up, fine, but there is a moment in time when you're rumbled. You know, when you're caught out, you've got to eat the shit sandwich, right? They had to, when that happened at Sydney, when they realised it was gone, it was over. They had to pick that moment in time to go all in, all the details, and try as best they could deal with it and triage it. What you don't want is what's now up to 3.5 weeks of the drip, 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 which has led towards that lie that Brook told. And look, you know, a number of people have said that the lie he told that he went out on his own, no one really believed that. Cam Ponsonby's piece that we referred to last week, trying to cover his mate's tracks, perhaps thinking they could get away with it. That was the wrong move in an environment where there were going to be lots of people exploring this and chasing after it. And what do you know, on Friday, there's Will McPherson and Nick Holt who've got the story that the whole episode has been thrown off to the cricket regulator. Brook puts out another statement, you know, I'll learn from this, I'll reflect on this, etc., etc. It's been put to me that this is a media beat up. It's a media beat up. It's a media story. We're all cross because we didn't get the information and we're all now whacking the England team. I don't really think it's that. It's just a cracking yarn, isn't it? It's just like a following any story that has 3.5 weeks of extra details lobbing is one that ends up being one of fascination, does become a bit of a scandal if it wasn't already. You know, going out night before an international match, your captain and getting in a blue with a bouncer probably already is scandal status, but now it absolutely is. One thing I'd add to this is that, like, I actually don't know whether this should be with the cricket regulator, and this won't necessarily be a popular comment, but I'm going to say it anyway. Isn't the cricket regulator there to deal with what we learnt out of the ICEC report, that cricket's got a problem with sexism and racism and classism and elitism, and that's what the regulator was there to deal with? Feels to me that the regulator now deals with anything that's a little bit stinky or a little bit tricky, gets handballed off to the regulator. Now, is there a bit of mission creep going on here? Is the regulator therefore an independent body with all its judicial might, there to deal with, you know, the England team trying to pull a Swiftie, getting in trouble, getting rumbled not once but twice, and the captain looking like a bit of an idiot? I don't know whether it is. I think that might be a waste of resources for that particular body.
How many lawyers do you need to investigate whether someone was on the piss or not?
Exactly.
You know, like, they were out on the piss. Which I
they got caught.
Yes.
They're fucked up a couple of times, multiple times.
Yeah.
It's a scandal. It's a great media yarn, but I'm not sure whether it, like, you know, I don't know.
It's not a scandal in terms of the action itself, right? Like, yes, it does. It is significant. You know, Ricky Ponting getting decked by a bouncer was a significant thing in his career and needing to get on the right track and all the rest of it. I am not a person who can credibly criticize somebody for going out drinking, right? Like, so that's not a thing. It's not a thing that would be reasonable. I'm not a person who could credibly criticize them for doing it the day before something important. Even then, right? Now, yes, I can acknowledge that if you're an elite athlete, it's probably not helpful to your performance on average. But also in cricket, we notoriously celebrate stories about people who went out and got hammered the night before or the morning of and went on to make runs. A.E. Stoddart has a chapter in our book, which is based on exactly this. Ken Rutherford, Darren Lehman,
Ken Rutherford.
On and on it goes. So that's kind of part of the game. I don't care if they went out drinking particularly. Maybe it shows a lack of professionalism. Maybe that annoys some people. Fine, you can be annoyed at it. For me, couldn't give a shit. I don't like it when sporting bodies that are effectively taxpayer supported lie to the public, lie to the people who follow the game and support the game. I don't like that. So I think they had a couple of choices. There was dishonesty from the beginning. Brook didn't tell anybody about it until the game the next day had already started, so it was too late for them to do anything before that match. They had a choice there where they could have gone either we don't take any formal action, we give them a telling off, and that's it, which would sort of support them not making it public because there wasn't any formal action taken. They did take formal action, and they fined him 30,000 quid.
30 grand.
£30,000, 60,000 Australian dollars. That's an annual salary for a lot of people, right? That is a lot of money. So that tells you that the people who were running the show were sufficiently pissed off about this that they said this is the severest level of offending that you can have that's able to be dealt with by a fine. So they thought it was important, right? But they also didn't think it was important enough to tell anybody about it. Once they'd done that, once they'd issued the fine, they absolutely had to cop it at that moment and say, this is what's happened, because it wasn't going to help anybody to try to bury it. It could have come out at any point during the Ashes. It was a ticking time bomb as it was. But it's a sequence of dishonesty. Brook's dishonest in not telling them about it until the next game started. ECB's dishonest in not acknowledging that the action's been taken in the first place. They still go to Noosa, party, get photographed, all the rest of it. Had they come out with that story earlier, the way they behaved in Perth after that loss, the way they behaved in Noosa and in Adelaide out drinking and so on, all of that would probably have been different, would probably have been more restrained had this story been public at the time. And then you've got Rob Key in Melbourne saying, the quote is, there wasn't any action, like formal action. We've had 4 years where we've had none of these issues really with any of the players, and there's a whole process that we put in place for stuff like that for what to do if they're out of line, and I didn't feel like this was worthy of formal warnings. Now, he's saying, oh, that's about the video of them drinking in the bar just before this happened. No, the one in Wellington. That's right. The Wellington video one came out in Wellington.
The vape, yeah.
But he clearly knows that the thing has happened. You don't get fined 30 grand without the director of cricket knowing that that's happened, right? So he's lying about there being nothing going on at that point. McCullum's interviewed after Sydney before the stories come out saying, oh, half the players don't drink. We don't have a big drinking culture. Richard Gould's doing interviews that day before the story comes out saying, we'll have a full review of everything that happened and find out what went on. He knew that this had happened. He didn't say anything. Everybody's been dishonest about it until a journalist gets the story and puts the story out. Then they put out a statement which doesn't specify details, supposedly from Brook. The statement says the player involved, singular, implying there's only one player involved. Brook doesn't do anything in person until the 21st of January. Then he lies again and says he's on his own. And only when another journalist's story comes out do they actually come out and say what was happening. It's a whole sequence of lying back to back to back for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. How are you supposed to, as a supporter of that team, as somebody following that team, have any faith in what they tell you if they're happy to treat you like you're a fucking moron? I just, that's the bit about it that pisses me off. The original offence, whatever. Yeah. The rest of it is the problem.
Yeah, look, I definitely take on board what you're saying. I'm probably more pragmatic on the first bit and agree with you on the second bit. I still stand by that. Like, there was no upside in them. They knew they can get away with the first bit. The probability of exploding on them early on.
So don't limited. Fine it. If you don't want to release the story, don't do anything formal. You know.
No, but I mean, boards keep things in. Stuff gets covered up all the time. That's the nature of that's just the nature of the world we live in, right? So they've made a strategic or tactical call, right? Because, you know, it feeds the objective, winning the Ashes, the strategy, not having something blow up, the tactic, don't feed it, right? But like I sort of also feel that where's the scrutiny here on how this aligns with, and this is, Shilberry was good on this on the weekend as well. What are the preconditions? And Mo and Ali was good too. Mo and Ali in that interview a couple of days ago, about providing yourself the best chance to succeed. You're right. We do glorify people getting on the gas the night before a game, but is this a moment to think about whether we should? It's still a high performance, mental, physical world that we live in. They all wear those Whoop watches these days to monitor their sleep and how well they've gone the night before, which all feeds in. I'm sure the people who are paid to implement the sports science programs at ECB and all the other places would be highly against it. Cricket has changed.
What comes up on the watch? What does the watch show you when you've been tanked till 3 a.m? It's just got a bunch of pints scrolling across the watch face.
Well, it gives you a percentage of sleep, and the percentage of sleep's always vastly worse when you've had anything to drink at all. That's what it's learned. The Whoops taught you that even a couple of pints makes your sleep so much worse than it would be if you don't drink at all. I think that's the main take out of that technology, as I understand it. So Mo and Ali's like, well, I don't really understand why people do drink before games. This is not quite right. The preconditions that led towards Harry Brook thinking this was a reasonable course of action, that requires a bit of a dint to Bram McCullum, doesn't it? Bram McCullum could not be more easy breezy, could he? He could not be more about having a few beers and doing it the old school way and providing players the freedom and the flexibility to basically do whatever they want. If a bloke in their mid-20s has made a decision that's led towards this train of events, all the scrutiny now on him to this. No one will forget this episode. So, the actual moment itself, getting out on the piss the night before a game, I'm not saying that's weapons grade scandal. Due to what's happened, it's become that. But the start of it all, should it be happening? I think this is pause for reflection time. Should it be part of the game, the professional elite game? It isn't for some teams. It isn't for some teams. The best example of that being what Mitchell Stark said to the media after the Sydney Test match. He knew he needed to work on marginal gains, knowing that he'd need to carry the attack on his own. So Stark, who loves a beer, said, well, I will achieve that marginal gain. So there is another path available to players. What happens next, how this feeds into the review, especially how it relates to how that dressing room has been allowed to function over several years, that's what's coming next.
And it might have been a benefit to that team to fly into Perth and say, hey, this thing's been going on. It's not good. We're going to leave this behind in New Zealand. We're going to snap into focus now, and we're going to be here with 100% of our attention on winning this series, right? I'd think anything you're admitting to later always looks worse than what you're admitting to when it's just happened. They had the chance. They blew that chance over and over and over again. But you're talking about quality of sleep, Adam. And if you're talking about quality of sleep, that leads into what we need to talk about before we go to our break. Is this our final Zeus show? I think it might be. I think it might be.
It's the last in the run. This has gone extremely well. I'm really proud of how well this partnership has worked with Zeus. Sleep refreshed. Got the box here, what I've been carrying around. Got the device. I've filmed the social media video, or should I say, Rach filmed the social media video of me wearing it sleeping, which should go out later today, I'm pretty sure. And just a reminder of how easy it is to use, really. You pop it on, you press the button, you go to sleep, you wake up in the morning and you've slept refreshed if sleeping due to where your tongue is a factor. All the work, I was reminded last week of all the work that went on behind the scenes. You don't just roll a product out like this, 15 years of work, all these clinical trials they've done to get to the point where when they've released it, it is hot to trot. And there's a reason why it's been so incredibly popular since it went on shelves last year. I think they started around this time last year. And our audience have totally embraced this. We've still got the 10% offer code. Hoover it up while you can. TFW 2026. For 10% off. Yeah, just want to thank Zeus for backing us in through the ashes and having faith in what we do and believing their audience would be receptive. And now I know that I'm very grateful I've got one. I'll be taking it everywhere with me to continue sleeping better, which is something that's ever so important to me when having to try and balance as many things as we do week in, week out.
And to continue to not annoy people who have to sleep near you, which is often Rachel, but sometimes other people on tour. You don't want to be keeping the person in the next room awake when you're chainsaw snoring through the wall and all the rest of it. That can create a hostile work environment.
Yes, so thanks to Nigel and Dale and the team. Thank you for all of your support of what we've done here at The Final Word, and hopefully we'll be working with you again real soon.
This is The Final Word, and we are back with another episode of Emma John's Adventures Around Australia. Although those adventures have now concluded, Emma, I'm talking to you from London, where you're sitting with Adam. Hello to both of you.
London. Boy, London's cold. Who knew?
It's such an exercise in contrast compared to what we've both enjoyed in Australia across the last however long it's been. Let's be grateful that it happened rather than sad that it's ended, or however that hackneyed cliche goes. And the highlight of your trip, which is what we want to talk to you about today, was crossing Nanalabor on a train. Now, this is quite the thing. I've seen this over the years. Tell us everything.
Emma, I've deliberately done no research about this. I've found out nothing about this because I wanted to find it out from you. This has been the most anticipated one that people keep talking about on the chat pages and so on. This isn't the GAN, which goes from Adelaide to Darwin. This is the train that goes from Adelaide to Perth. We know nothing. We are naive. We are but babes in the world. Tell us. Teach us.
Oh, it's so nice to be able to tell you something that you don't know about your countries. I've always wanted to do this for a very long time. I'd always loved the idea of the one that goes all the way across, just because it sounded like there was just sort of nothing there. With the Garn, it's like, you know that you're going to stop in the middle. You're going to be at Alice Springs. But the Nullarbor, I mean, the secret's in the name, no trees. Like, there's nothing. And so I've been really excited about it. Now, you can actually go, I think, pretty much from Sydney via Broken Hill. You can just keep going on this train. It's a much longer journey. I was in Adelaide because obviously that's where we had been for the test match. And I was going to Perth, which is where my uncle and aunt live, for Christmas. So I did Adelaide to Perth, which is 3 days, 2 nights on the train. It sounds longer than it is because actually you don't get on the train until the evening of the first day, really. So you have a whole lovely day in Adelaide, and then they give you dinner at the train station in Adelaide, which is where you get to meet people for the first time. And I suppose that's a big part of a long train journey like this, is that you're going to be in carriages with people. You get your own cabin, obviously, for a while. And so really it is kind of an experience, not just in seeing what does the outback look like, but it's also in getting to know people who you're going to be traveling with, which is amazing.
Had some of them been all the way through from Sydney as well? Like they were picking you up along the way kind of energy?
Oh my goodness, there were a couple that I met who had done the Brisbane bit as well. There's another train that comes down from Brisbane, and they'd done Brisbane to Sydney and were now doing Sydney to Perth. So, I was like a complete novice at this train. And they could also tell you which bits of the track aren't as good as others, because what happens is that when the track is really good, which it is between Adelaide and Perth, you have a really smooth ride and you sleep really well. But there is one section of track apparently between Sydney and Adelaide that is quite, the actual sleepers are older and rougher. When I arrived in Adelaide, they'd had a little bit of a sleepless night the night before, because it was the one where you get like rattled around a bit.
And how does it work in practice? Do you stop periodically? Is there a sort of like a cruise ship vibe to it where you will get out and have a look where you are, or are you cannoning all the way through?
There are 2 stops. There are only 2 stops on this whole thing. And in some ways, they're as practical as they are sort of touristic. You get off at a little ghost town called Cook, which was an old railway service town, essentially. You get off there because the train needs to refuel. It needs fuel and it needs to take on water because you're doing such a long journey. So you get out there for 30 minutes. And it is fascinating because it is a proper ghost town. Well, I say it's a ghost town. It actually has ghosts, in the sense of, we had been told, nobody really works here, nobody really lives here or works here anymore. And so you sort of get off the train and you see these old buildings where there used to be a school and there used to be a pub. And then you sort of come across people who were wearing, I came across this woman who was wearing high vis, and I was like, I don't recognize her from the train. And she was my ghost. She was a young woman who does work there on the railway. And it was just amazing to get to stop in the middle of the desert and talk to somebody who is living there for a year as she does this job. And I said to her, like, oh, what's that like? And she was a bit down. She was like, my best friend from the station just left and went back home yesterday. So I've got another 6 months without my best friend. They have to have all their food brought in for them. And we didn't actually get off at this place, but we did pause in another railway, what used to be a railway town called Tarcoola. It's not even a town anymore. That is just a junction. But what was really incredible was that as we left again on the train, an older lady in my carriage started talking about Tarcoola, and it turned out she had lived there when she was a young girl, and her dad was like the postmaster there or something. And so she lived in the post office, and she was able to tell us all about what Tarcoola looked like when it was a really busy, like, I think over 1,000 people town. And now there's, tumbleweed. What an amazing kind of journey through Australian history.
It strikes me that if you're the person working at the ghost town and the other person's just left, that was your best friend, but also your worst enemy. So I'm trying to get my head around. So when you're on the train, you get on, you meet people. Is it that kind of cruise ship vibe that you're going to be spending some time with them? Is it, is there a dining car? Are you sort of, oh, good evening, Colonel. Oh, good evening, madam. That kind of situation. What's going on that train?
So it's very interesting. This train is nearly a kilometre long. Okay. It is incredible. There are 32 carriages, I think. It is so long that when you board, they have to put the train on 2 different platforms and then shunt it together afterwards. And some people get taken up to the end of their train, like on a little buggy, because, it's too far to walk. It's extraordinary. When you go round, obviously mostly it's a very, very straight track. Famously, I think it is the longest portion of straight railway track that exists in the world, maybe. But sometimes there are curves, and when you're going around a curve, and it only happened to me like 2 or 3 times, but you get to see the actual locomotive. By the way, there are 2. This train is so big it needs 2 engines. Feels like it's practically in a different postcode to you. You are separated into 3 carriages at a time, and your 3 carriages will have a dining car, a lounge, and so while you have your own blissfully large cabin, and believe me, from somebody who lives in London in a small flat, you find those kind of cabins really quite spacious. Double bed to yourself, ensuite bathroom, very nice products in the bathrooms, by the way. I mean, this is a fancy train. I'm not going to lie. This is a luxury experience, people.
Okay.
But yeah, so you have your own cabin. And what was interesting was that obviously on the kind of first night, people wanted to like spend time in their cabin. And certainly the second morning, people went to breakfast and then went back to their cabin. And interestingly, by the second day, people were just like, everybody was like really into it, hanging out in the lounge all day because they just wanted to like chat to each other. And you do have your own little bar in this lounge. If you want a Bucks Fizz or a mimosa, as I believe the Australians call it, for breakfast, it's there in it. And ours was made with Bollinger. They look after you very well. And it fosters this really communal, like, chatty vibe. And you guys know I'm a chatty person, clearly. I like meeting people. I thought it was fascinating just getting to spend time with people. And you tend to think, especially when you think of cruise ships, yes, especially luxury experiences, they tend to be an older clientele. The train did skew a bit that way, but that didn't mean there weren't kind of younger people. I got to know a winemaker and his partner, who I think were probably in their early 30s. He was really just kind of starting out with his own business, having been in the winemaking industry since he left university. And that was just an extraordinary experience to have. I had my own personal wine taster on the trip who could tell me, no, don't drink this one, drink this one.
So you're in your segment, and so it's not like you can walk the whole kilometre of the train up and back sussing things out. You've got your island, and then you've got the hangout with the people in your island.
That's right. And one of the reasons you can't walk up and down the train is because so a lot of the engine stuff is like in these enormous carriages in the middle of the train, which literally kind of cuts off one side of the train from the other. So the other place that we stopped that I didn't mention, on the second evening, you actually stop for a proper long trip, because, by the way, at Cook, when you get off for 30 minutes, they say we're going to blow the train horn or whistle after 30 minutes. And there is no panic like the panic of hearing a train horn when you're quite far away from the train because you've gone off exploring too far and you know that that's the only train for a week. There is no panic like that. I have never shifted so fast back to a train. I mean, obviously they do a roll call. They've got your names. They're not going to leave without you.
To new best friend of the girl who was stuck there.
I could have been new best friend. I could have lived with the railway worker. But the second night, you actually all get off the train because you pull in at this another train station, and it's called Rawlina Station. Now, it's very interesting because Rawlina Station refers both to the train station, but it refers to the sheep station, which is the largest working sheep station in Australia. It's absolutely enormous because obviously it's like in the middle of the Nullarbor. So you get off and they do a dinner under the stars, long refectory tables. And it's that moment when you, having spent a day in this small confined environment with people, and you get off the train and you just see more and more and more and more people walking down the platform. And that's the first time you realise how many people are on that train. And you all sit together and you have this family style meal that's organised by the woman and her partner, who are the only people who live there, the only people, and they create this amazing dinner for you.
Next summer, putting my cricket lenses on here, the series against New Zealand begins in Perth, then moves to Adelaide. There's no Brisbane Test match. So if you're a rugged individualist, or indeed you're just a chatty person like Emma, you can get the train from Perth to Adelaide between test matches. Wouldn't that be a clever way to, I mean, assuming, of course, the return route lines up with the test dates.
Yeah. Obviously, I've talked about the social experience, but the thing I haven't said is that the landscape, I mean, it is such a misnomer that people have said to me, why would you do that? That's 3 days of nothing. Now, what is absolutely unique about this experience is that it is, firstly, yes, you get a day pretty much, in true Nullarbor. So you've gone through a lot of bush where you get really kind of fascinated by it, because even though it all looks the same, the longer you spend with it, you start to see the variety, you start to see the different colours, and then it kind of gradually dwindles down to nothing. This is on the way between Adelaide and Perth. And then you've got just the red earth with these very low green stunted bushes everywhere. So it's never just like red, red sand, red dirt. There's always these kind of like endless to the horizon green scrub, and you spend pretty much a day with that, and you see the sun go down out over it, and it feels like you're on another planet, and you're like, wow, the world is crazy. But the next day when you wake up, as I did, I've set my alarm because I wanted to see the dawn, so you wake up early in order to see, and you suddenly realize, as the light suddenly comes through and the mist clears, you realize, right, we're in bush again now. So you're going past, you literally see watering holes. People saw kangaroos, emus, everything from the side of the train. But then what happens, that section, that day between Adelaide and Perth, you go through the full gamut of Australian landscape. So you get the different kinds of bush. You get granite ranges that suddenly appear. You get stone quarries. You get farmland. You get salt lake. We went past these salt lakes that actually sparkled. It was like you were going through like plains of diamonds. And then you get to these beautiful country towns on the outskirts or further out than Perth, but the surrounds. And then, of course, you come through suburbs, and then you're into the city. And it is Australia in a little capsule of a day, and you don't even have to drive through it. You get to sit at the window and just let it all go past your eyes. It's incredible.
And then when you get off at the far end, when you arrive in Perth, you return back to normal life after this little dreamscape. What happens then?
My uncle and aunt, they live in a suburb of Perth, North Beach, and it's, we know those neighbourhoods really well. Scarborough, Trig, the gorgeous neighbourhood beaches, your little neighbourhood cafes, Sisters Cafe on Burns Beach, where they make the most incredible smoothies and amazing, sausage rolls and all these kind of things. But I have to say, when people say to me that they haven't been to Perth yet, and this is not just people who've travelled in Australia, like, English people who go over and are like, oh, it's so far away, like I've never made it out there. But sometimes Australians who are like, oh, what's in Perth? Perth is the most dynamic city. It's had the most extraordinary kind of second coming revival, renovation over the last 15 years. And because I've got family there, I've got to watch all this happen.
Jeff and you and I went on a walking tour of Perth many years ago. It's a small bar scene, isn't it? That these little laneways have all been liberated with the way they've made a dedicated effort to change the way that Perth feels after dark, and that's worked a treat as well.
Apparently that is all because they literally changed the licensing law in order to make that happen. And so now you get these tiny little bars, and what I love about those is that they kind of like, they can have like a sole focus, but it also, because it's night, because they've really kind of created this new nightlife, I think it's really helped the culture blossom. Like, there was always kind of like decent, there was always a decent orchestra in Perth. There was always a decent, opera, some decent theatre. But it because of that kind of opening up of the nightlife, it encourages more things. We talked about the Adelaide Fringe. There's a Perth Fringe that is also, one of the biggest fringe festivals. They put loads of money into the Western Australian Museum. So that is now now like a really, really cool like new space. Honestly, there's so much going on and weird stuff that you don't expect. I mean, I did not realize that in the bell tower, one of these kind of like really iconic new buildings on Elizabeth Quay, the bells inside the bell tower are actually from London. They're the old St. Martin's in the Fields bells, and they're hundreds and hundreds of years old, and they've been used to ring in everything from British naval victories to coronations. And you guys have them in Australia. Like, what's that about? It's just absolutely amazing, and still getting run.
It's as iconic as the seat from Notting Hill, which for a long time we also thought was in the park outside of the Wacker, and it turned out it was simply a replica. But we and many people in the media were sorted out in the Ashes series about 8 years ago.
Emma, thank you. That has been another episode of Emma John's Tour Around Australia, which we're bringing to you with the support of Tourism Australia. We've got a couple more episodes with you. We're going to check back in with you to talk about Melbourne and to talk about some of the non-Ashes state destinations. Looking forward to that. 2 weeks to go. We'll see you next week.
See you then.
Jeff, big news from Australia last week is that Australia has a new all-format women's skipper, and it's Sophie Molyneux, who is, the way I see it anyway, and you'll have a view on this, it feels like she's basically seen off Talia McGrath, who's been doing the job in Healy's absence periodically. They've already had Ash Gardner as an option there as vice-captain. She would have been another available option to them, but instead jumping over the top is Sophie Molyneux, who's led the Renegades to WBBL success. Their coach, Simon Helmut, said when they won, there's a really good social media video where he goes, "You've led us to victory today, and one day you will captain Australia." And he's a pretty good judge, Simon Helmut. He's been around the world watching teams at a high performance level for a long time. They always want Sophie Molyneux in the team when she's fit. Whenever she's returned from injury, including that serious knee surgery a couple of years ago, she's straight back in. They've backed her time and time again. She seldom let them down, and they think that she's got the skill set required, and perhaps a little bit of a generation pause as well, noting that Healy's roughly the same age as Lanning, and there's the Perry generation, whereas we're clearly now into generation next for this Australian team, and under her they'll want to go to another level again.
They needed to make that jump down the generations for sure. I find it curious, given particularly with the injury history, she's been out so much of the last few years, and during the 50 over World Cup last year was in and out of that side, whether it was sort of injury management or whether it was opposition dependent was hard to tell, but they were doing a do-si-do with the spinners, with Georgia Wareham, having Alana King in there, and then having Molyneux hopping in and out of that side. What do you make of it from that point of view, where they've already said they're going to have to manage her and potentially rotate her, which means that, and then they've got two vice captains now. So they've named Talia McGrath as who was already the vice captain, as continuing as vice captain, but also Ash Gardner's going to be a vice captain, which is a little bit sort of trying to have the best of both worlds. I wonder particularly what it means for McGrath, because they're saying, well, you were good enough to fill in as captain whenever Healy wasn't available, but you're not good enough to take the job full time. That's a curious aspect to that, picking someone who's not necessarily going to be available all of the time.
I suppose they're backing her to be available. Like you don't really pick teams with the assumption that someone's going to be injured. She's the same age as Ash Gardner, so just on that again. So she's 28, Gardner's 28, McGrath's 30. It's only 2 years, but if you're looking for that sort of longer term stability and having a captain that's a little bit younger, that's not always the worst thing. And they've always, as I mentioned before, whenever she's fit, they've always wanted her in and around the team. She's clearly core to the soul of the team, the culture of the team. But yeah, it's probably a good thing that it's been a tough choice, right? They've had three credible candidates for the job. I don't think it rules out Ash Gardner being the captain down the track, by the way. I remember talking to one Australian player years ago about this. I wrote an article speculating that Ash Gardner could become the captain of the Aussie team one day. And she's like, yeah, she might do, a long way down the track, like the suggestion that she wasn't quite equipped for it at that stage of her career. But they could imagine a world way down the path where she might be. Maybe that's the direction here, where Molyneux does it for a stretch, usual cycle for an international captain, 3 or 4 years thereabouts. And then Gardner has the chance to do it a few years from now from the same group. And whilst having that stability of Talia McGrath, who has done it, I don't know how many times she's captained Australia now, but it must be sort of 20 odd across a decent stretch of time, that she'll be the perfect deputy. A bit like how Steve Smith performs that role quite a lot now to Pat Cummins on the men's side of the ledger. When he steps in, you don't really lose much for it tactically. They've got McGrath there as well. So, yeah, it's like a lot of things in cricket, I guess there's no 100% right decision in a lot of things in cricket, as it is in life. It's all about judgment, and the judgment of those who in the inner sanctum think that Molyneux is the best leader of the lot. And that comment from Simon Helmut jumped out at me as well. Like, you will captain Australia one day. It was quite emphatic. So that probably gives a bit of a window to the soul of Aussie cricket, because we're not, in the dressing room. Like, she must be so highly
weird if we were. Yeah.
No, but you know what I mean? Like, sometimes with some teams, you really do get a feel for how they're functioning day in, day out. But probably a bit harder with the Aussie women's team, because we're not as immersed in it as we would be, say, the Aussie men's team, where we're covering it around the world every week.
I find this one odd, I've got to say. So I think Molyneux's leadership material, that has always been there. Like, from a young age, the way that she came through with the Renegades when they were no good, they didn't have any international players. Remember how it was, the early days of the WBBL, you had all of the stacked teams, the star-studded ones, and the Renegades couldn't get any Australian players to play for them, and they weren't very good. They lost a lot. They had to develop their own players. They had to build that sort of core themselves, and she was such a central part of that. Her and Molly Strano were the highest quality players and the ones who held that together. So I can see that in terms of the personality type. I don't really see it in terms of, you've got to pick your captain from the players at your disposal. Sophie Molyneux is a very good cricketer. I don't think she'd be a lock for an Australian 11 in every format every single time they played. I don't think Talia McGrath's a lock in every Australian 11 in every format every time they play either. She's had her struggles at different times. Ash Gardner is a lock in every Australian 11 every time they play if she's fit and available. She will play any format. She is an absolute, she's a permanent marker on the team sheet, not a pencil. And then when you come to your spinners, you've got spin all-rounders effectively in Georgia Wareham and in Alana King. Is Sophie Molyneux a better bowler than Alana King? No, she's not. She's very good, but she's not. Like, Alana King is at another level. Is Sophie Molyneux a better bowler than Georgia Wareham? Probably about on a level in terms of defensive T20 capabilities and so on. Is she a better bat than Georgia Wareham? No, Georgia Wareham's more destructive. So you've got those two players where each of them, I think, clearly have an edge on her as cricketers. And you've got Ash Gardner, who is a better bat and a better bowler than Sophie Molyneux. And then you're bringing a fourth spinning all-rounder into the mix and saying this player has to play whenever they're available, meaning that some of the others have to make way. So Alana King's already out of the T20 squad for this upcoming series. Didn't have the best time in the WBBL last season, but we've seen what she can do over a period of time. And part of the reason for that is that Molyneux's got to come into that side to lead it. And so there's a spinning all-rounder spot taken up with someone who's not going to bat top order, who's going to have to bat lower down. That's what I find strangest about it, where I don't think she is the best player in that position compared to any of those three, and yet she's going to have one of those spots, which will mean that other players will be missing out more.
Yeah, I just wouldn't. Yeah, I take your point. I just would never think to compare her to King and to Wareham. It wouldn't occur to me to compare her to those two being a left arm finger spinner. I wouldn't be thinking of it. That's not how I see it framed up. I see it more here with Gardner as a right arm finger spinner and a left arm finger spinner. I see them as such discrete roles, especially in shorter form cricket. Like wrist spin, is clearly a weapon in short form cricket, but it's such a different art and craft to the finger spin. Pin them down, roll.
They're two very different wrist spinners. So well. King and Wareham are not the same bowler, so there's no
absolutely not.
There's a reason they've thrived when playing together.
Yeah, there's a poetry to the way, but I feel a way that Molyneux, having watched her bowl for a long stretch of time, just relentlessly keeps her stumps in play. Very similar to Jess Jonathan, actually, a generation on from a few years on from Jess Jonathan. I don't know if I were picking an Australian team, I'd always want Molyneux in there. On that basis, but this is again coming down to this is why cricket teams aren't picked on spreadsheets. I guess that it's an element of subjectivity to all of these things, and they've seen that the wider package of Molyneux is the one they want to back for the longer term. She'll be leading Australia in a World Cup in England in the middle of the year, one that will include Ireland, Scotland, the Netherlands, and Bangladesh. So they're the four qualifiers that have made it through. Thailand didn't. Ireland beat Thailand by 62 runs on Sunday to sort of make sure of that score. They were already gone, Thailand, by that stage. Scotland beat the USA by 41 runs on the final day. Bangladesh beat the Dutch, but it didn't matter because both of those teams were already through. Bangladesh were undefeated through both stages of the tournament. So the World Cup becomes England, the hosts, Australia, India, New Zealand, South Africa, the West Indies, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and then Bangladesh, Ireland, Netherlands, Scotland. It all begins on the 12th of June, and there will, of course, be daily episodes every single day of that Women's T20 World Cup on the final word. That much I'm absolutely certain of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm more excited for that one than for the men's. Hopefully, it will be less chaotic, and we won't have teams pulling out and being kicked out and all the rest of it. The WPL, the women's version of the IPL, is it's still going somehow. The final's about to happen. It feels like this tournament's been ending for weeks. We kept saying it's at the business end. It's at the business end. Well, it continues to be at the business end. We know who the finalists are.
Well, they don't play every day. That's the fundamental difference. So 20 group games across a longer stretch of time compared to men's T20 where it's just cricket upon cricket upon cricket. But yeah, Delhi beat the UP Warriors with the Z on the end to make sure of the final spot. That was on Sunday evening. Mumbai lost to Gujarat by 11 runs on the Saturday to leave them in the drop zone. That was despite Harmanpreet making 82 not out from 48 balls as the Mumbai captain, and she scored the most runs in the group stage, but her team are going home. The Teen Wolf not the Teen Wolf anymore, of course, Laura Wolver held her nerve in a close chase for Delhi. So it's Delhi versus Gujarat in, let's call it the preliminary final. That's on Tuesday. They'll earn the right to play the top of the table RCB, who are still flying. They won their last group game chasing 147, and they chased it 2 down in 13 overs. Thanks for that. Grace Harris, 75 from 37 balls in that smash up for RCB when they were knocking over the UP Warriors, who I talked of before. So the three teams left, Delhi, Gujarat, and then the mighty RCB. That's the WPL wrap-up, and that'll end next weekend. So we'll tell you about the business end for the fourth week in a row on the next weekly edition of The Final Word. What we'll do
it's
here
all
as
business.
well, Jeff,
it's all business and pleasure. Yeah, let's have a break, and then
I think we should.
3.
This will be a busy final segment of The Final Word. Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon, we are with you. As always, thanks to our principal partners at Maurice Blackburn Lawyers. Always proud to be working in partnership with them. They've been there on behalf of hardworking Australians since 1919, Jeff, and we tell the stories of the work that they do on behalf of hardworking Aussies too.
And some of the stories just bring you up short with the things that people have to go through and the extra privation they have to go through to try to get the support that they need. The story of Rebecca is one that was sent through to us this week. When Rebecca lost her husband Lee to a rare work-related cancer, she faced a world that had changed overnight. She was a single mother, 3 young boys, dealing with not only her own loss and grief, but also the uncertainty of a future for them and for how she could provide for them. It was March 2019 when her husband Lee was diagnosed with a very rare and aggressive cancer of the head and neck, just horrible stuff. And it took his life quickly. And while she was in the middle of her grief, she came across a news article about welding and the connection that it had to certain cancers. It was something that made her heart sink because that was exactly the cancer that had affected Lee. She called Maurice Blackburn. She spoke with a specialist dust disease lawyer, Ross Sotil, and while they had an uphill battle for compensation in this claim, eventually the claim was resolved at a settlement conference just a few weeks away from trial. So they took it right up to the red line. But once that settlement was made, it hugely eased the financial uncertainty of caring for 3 young kids on her own and let her at least face the future with a little more solid ground under her feet. So that's the kind of work that Maurice Blackburn does for people who need that support due to accident, injury, death in the workplace or related to work. And it's the kind of support that they might be able to help you out with if that's the kind of support that you need.
Learn more about Maurice Blackburn by clicking the link in the show notes or simply searching him in all the usual places, and we'll keep telling you stories of Maurice Blackburn through the next couple of months on the show as the principal partner of this season 19 on The Final Word. Jeff, we're going back to the men's game for the final segment, specifically to the T20 World Cup and the warm-up series that have been taking place. We talked quite a lot about England's team off the field, but on the field, they're going very well in that format. They've now won 9 of their last 10 T20 internationals, having won a couple of one-dayers to wrap up that series as well. They're 2-0 up in the T20s in Sri Lanka. They won by 11 runs and then 6 runs in a shortened DLS game. Interestingly, Tom Banton's thrusting himself into contention here. 54 not out from 33 balls. I don't reckon he was in their first choice 11 a week ago, but he might be now. Phil Salt made quick runs in the first game too. Rashid wickets. He and Dawson the old firm back together. Quite interesting that pairing is going to be so crucial to England's fortunes with the ball. But yeah, that top four of Butler, Salt, Bethel, and Brook, that's pretty tasty. Then you got Sam Curran, who picked up a hat trick the other day. Was player of the series in a World Cup. He might have been player of the match in that World Cup final at the G as well in this format back in 2022. So well suited to the big stage. And of course, the big quick Jofra Archer, who's back from that side strain that he picked up during the Ashes series. And on top of that, a pretty soft group, absent Bangladesh, it's Scotland, Italy, Nepal, and Windies in that order. So England are coming in good nick, and they've got a good opportunity, I would say, to sweep the group and be in really good state of affairs when they head into the tougher part of the tournament.
Maybe the captain should get in trouble more often because, if hijinks in New Zealand were the reason they bombed in the Ashes, then getting in trouble now must be the reason that they're doing well in this series, right? Like everybody assumes that whatever's just happened is the reason that the next thing happened. So that must be why he should do press conferences where he confesses to things more often.
Well, he made that outrageous 100 last week as well, and he did the Stone Cold Steve Austin crunching the beer cans together celebration upon reaching three figures. I probably should have mentioned this in the earlier conversation around it, but that doesn't really strike you as a guy who's contrite about what's gone down.
No.
It's more kind of a yes, playing to his dressing room, and again, I'm not one to judge playing to your teammates. Everyone I play with does stuff like that. You're kind of performing to an audience of 10.
Yeah, you're not getting paid for it, though.
To an audience. Yeah, you're doing it to no, but we often see inside jokes in dressing rooms and whatever else play out on the field.
Sure.
But again, it's kind of more like he probably thinks, I've been bloody hard done by there. And again, it comes back to what I said before about what is underpinning the thinking in the dressing room and how much of that we scrutiny that falls back on the shoulders of Brendan McCullum. Probably not much if they win the tournament because, as Shane Warne used to say, winners have parties and losers have meetings. We'll see.
I think what it tells you is that somebody else wrote the apology statements that were sent out with his name signed at the bottom and then that he read out in the press conferences. I think that's what it tells you. There's not a lot of sorry going on. But I'm more interested in the old boys, in Adil Rashid. How long is he going to play for? He could play forever. Feels like he has been playing forever. Just keep ripping him down for another 10 years. Why not? And then, Liam Dawson coming back into the frame finally after all of these years of chipping away, of saying, where's Dawson in, he got that test match, didn't go so well, but I don't know, maybe he could have done something in Australia. I don't think bringing Liam Dawson would have won him the Ashes, but he's there in conditions that might be more conducive to him.
Oh, he definitely should have played in the Ashes or Jack Lynch, one or the other. But anyway, that's I won't get back on that. I won't bang that drum anymore. I think our listeners have heard enough.
Time is done.
It is that time as well. Adil Rashid, how about that incredible stat from the one days a couple of weeks ago? He was batting 11 and Zach Crawley was batting 1, right? In the batting for the first one day. They'd played exactly the same number of first-class innings to that point. Crawley batting 1, Rashid batting 11. And Rashid had a better first-class batting average than Crawley in exactly the same number of innings. It's one of those quirks in the game. I know that that doesn't reflect what Rashid is as a batter in 2026. But
not anymore,
it probably says more about his longevity. He made his debut for England back in 2009. What a different world the T20 orbit even was in 17 years ago when Adil Rashid played in that World Cup in 2009, and the fact that he's going to go around again, it's a great story. It'll make for a hell of a book one day, and hopefully Adil Rashid can enjoy success in this tournament as well. If they are to have ultimate success at some stage, presumably they'll need to beat India, who have gone hog wild on New Zealand. They've recorded the highest run rate ever in a bilateral series. They went at 12 and a half on average through the series. So it speaks for itself, doesn't it? The one game I watched when I was crook on the couch last week was when New Zealand actually beat them, but it was only after Shubham Dubé made 50 and 15 balls and was out at the non-striker's end with a flick on from the bowler. If that didn't happen, they would have won that game as well in all probability. But India scores 238 for 7. 209 for 3 in 15.2 overs, 155 for 2 from 10. That 165 was in a loss. And then 271 for 5 in the final game. 271 for 5 with Ishan Kishan making 103 from 43 balls. These are numbers that almost have no meaning anymore. They're so wild and they happen with such regularity, and we are conditioned to it, I guess, from the IPL. But then you throw in their bowlers. Ashdeep Singh took a fifer. And I know Bumrah got towed up in one of the games, but a cheap 3 for in another one, and we know that Bumrah steps up at big tournaments. And, you know, they play America in their first game at the work, rest and play, then on to Namibia, then maybe a Pakistan walkover, then the Netherlands. I mean, you know, India are in proper cruise control. So much so that the game they lost, Surya Kumar Yadav said, oh yeah, all good, all good. We decided to put in intentionally an inferior batting group that they played one fewer batter just to see whether we could still win. Like, it's just like, you know, they're Harlem Globetrotter stuff with how strong that T20 team is. They will win this. They will win this T20 World Cup outright. They will win it by 20 goals, all things being equal. On the walk-in, they will rout teams.
These numbers are not real. India didn't do these things, right? These numbers are hallucinated. This is 238, 209, 271, and they would have made 310 in the other game if they had to bet the full 20 overs at that rate. This didn't happen. This was simulated. This is ChatGPT scorecards, like just hallucinating shit. This is just a large language model just making shit up, just jamming things together, going, this looks vaguely like a set of numbers that could occur on a cricket scorecard. None of this actually happened. This is a computer going crazy. Like, this is the simulation eating itself. It can't be real. It's just so casual. It's so breezy. It's so easy. They're like, we'll pick whoever. It doesn't matter. We'll just throw in, here's another guy from the IPL you've never heard of. Oh, well, the hell, he just made 120 of like 45 balls. No problem whatsoever. Like, I don't know how to absorb the Indian T20 team. I think they're better. They're better than any other team has been better than other teams in the format, if that makes sense. Like, the margin just seems absurd.
But it's gotten bigger since the last World Cup. That's probably the point I should have made before. It's gotten big. So they played that World Cup final against South Africa.
Because they don't have the monkey on the back anymore. Because they hadn't won. Because they'd been waiting for a while to win something, and now that's gone. And now it's like, fine, let's just spin circles. Like, let's do whatever we want.
Well, they get the chance to be the best expression of themselves without that added baggage of not having won the tournament. And Kohli and all of the Kohli-Rohit storylines that rattle around as well.
Yep.
Now they're doing it absent that pair, and they are able to fully express themselves. And, like, look at South Africa, who...
They're just hallucinating. They're passing the Dubé to the left-hand side, the Shivam Dubé.
South Africa have, towed up the Windies at home in their warm-up tournament. Mm-hmm. Good story here. Quinton de Kock made 115 from 49 balls, his first ton after returning to the Proteas team. His last game before this stretch, his last game was that World Cup final in Barbados a couple of years ago, which they should have won if not for that extraordinary finish with Jasprit Bumrah and Ashdeep Singh, marvellous bowling, which just finished South Africa off in such stunning style. But the Windies won one of those games on a Duckworth-Lewis, a 10-over thrash. But generally speaking, it's South Africa taking more out of that. Discounting them would be daft, though, because they are, they're probably the new New Zealand. We used to talk about New Zealand in those slightly patronising, punching above their weight terms. Well, we would have never said that about South Africa when things were vaguely even with the way that the finances of the game work. But now that they aren't even remotely, South Africa feel like that punchy outsider when they shouldn't be, given the success they've enjoyed even in the Test Championship last year. And their run is Canada, Afghanistan, that'll be the toughest game in their group, then New Zealand, then the UAE. You could say that's the toughest group, actually, with Afghanistan, New Zealand, and South Africa vying for 2 spots, and Canada and the UAE needing something pretty special to happen from associate ranks. But 3 full members there, and they start with Canada. And, always bullish about what South Africa could theoretically achieve in global tournaments. They did make the final last time.
Yeah, Norkia's back as well in that squad. So, they certainly blow away the teams that won't be used to facing that kind of pace. And Quinton de Kock being back adds a fair bit there. They've got the quality. They've also kind of sort of got the monkey off the back. I mean, the World Test Championship final was emotionally cleansing for South Africans to win something, but I don't think that translates fully to a white ball tournament. They've still got all of their angst about white ball stuff. I reckon will haunt them more than India's than India's 2020-23. But in terms of people who should be worrying about the past and how it might reflect on the future, I'd like to ask Jason Gillespie why he's going back to coach in Pakistan again, considering we talked about people being owed money. I'm pretty sure they still owe him money from coaching the national team and getting squeezed out in ridiculous circumstances. But he signed up to go back to the PSL this time. They've got a new team. They've got a couple of new teams coming. One of them will be Hyderabad. Would have thought that he'd be staying away from that gig. I hope you're getting paid up front, Tizzy. I hope it's 100% on the line, in your account before you leave Australia.
Yeah, and the other thing is the PSL might look very different to what it did when he signed that deal. There could be enormous implications of what we were discussing off the front of the show for the PSL, because other countries might simply say no NOCs. They might be told by India, this has happened to us, you will in solidarity now no longer permit Pakistani players into your tournaments, and in return, you'll be barring your players from heading over there. That could easily happen, in which case the PSL would be a watered-down version of what it is. So, yeah, quite right. I hope Jason Gillespie is paid up front. Maybe Greg Shippard can join him next year in the PSL because he won't be coaching New South Wales or the Sixers. Interesting story, this. So he's been sacked by the Sixers. Of course, their season's over. They were the defeated finalists last weekend, and he's done with New South Wales at the end of the state season. One of the greats of state coaching. He started back in 1991 or something with Tasmania as a really young man. He's 69 now. Interesting timing. He's gotten the Sixers into the final. He's gotten New South Wales kind of into the pack. They started well. They lost a couple of key games in there as well before the break, but they're in the pack. They could feasibly make the final still. He took over New South Wales cricket when they were in a real state, when they had that winless season, earned the wooden spoon and all the rest of it. He came there and got them back to a position of stability. I know he's been with the Sixers for a long time before that. He was the inaugural coach of the Stars back in Victoria too, when he was coaching in that state for a long period of time. But yeah, Lee Jamon was on SEN today talking about it and saying quite bluntly, it's titles or nothing. That's the measure for a New South Wales coach. And yet, great, the Sixers made the final, but they haven't been winning stuff. So that's a pretty high. It's a pretty high bar to set when you're the chief executive. He was asked us that question as well. If it's good enough for the coach, should it be good enough for the chief executive? And his response was, that's why I've made the change. So, I don't know whether there's more to this, other internals. I suppose we'll find out in the fullness of time. But a contract extension was offered to and taken by Shippard quite recently as well. So after the contract extension, they're parting ways with him. And, it's
hope he got paid up front.
It seems a quirky one where he could have had his contract extended, got the Sixers to the final in pretty good nick. Bit unlucky there. We talked last week about all the travel and the logistics weren't ideal to win out there, the rain delay that wasn't, and so on in the decider at Perth.
And just going to Perth, and then, like having to get sent to Perth to play him in the final is the toughest road trip in the sport. Like the cliche is true. I mean, you're saying in the middle of the pack, could they make a Shield final from where they are?
Yep, they're fourth.
So
there are
what
three
happens
teams.
if they win it?
Well, I was wondering this. So Victoria are way out in front, and the Victorian one-day campaign begins tomorrow. We're back into the Dean Jones Cup tomorrow for those who follow domestic 50-over cricket. Then the Shield rounds will start in turn. But yeah, like New South Wales are fourth, but that's as good as second with the way they're all grouped together. They're like all within half a game or whatever. So yeah, they make the Shield final against the Vics and get on a bit of a roll. That'd be quite awkward if they actually did win.
It's also odd to sack the coach and then say that he's going to see out the season. Given that's 4 Shield rounds, that's a fair bit of cricket. So I mean that generally doesn't happen. Coaches tend to pack up, and there's always the even if it's dead cat bounce, there's the win the week after. Like you'll remember, was it St Kilda beating Port Adelaide the week after Malcolm Black got sacked or whatever it was.
Yeah,
like that happens. That
does it ever?
That bounce back tends to happen. A little different in red ball cricket.
No, unleash the Geesh. Last round of 1997, Jeff Geeshan in beating Carlton at Princess Park. Or what about when Benny Allen took over Fremantle and knocked off my lot, round 17, 2001? Stand-in coaches do get you wins, whether they should or shouldn't. That's really dating me there, citing a couple of games from the 1990s.
Sure is. But look, but he's not. That's not going to happen because he's going to still be in the gig. So they're going to know that he's been sacked, but he'll still be there. I mean, I hope he wins the Shield final just to make things uncomfortable. It'd be funny if it was. I mean, look, and if it doesn't, like you're 69, I think it's okay to finish a career as well. It's okay to say that you've given it your all for a long period of time. he's genuinely a great of cricket coaching in Australia, and I think the big part that people will remember from Greg Shippard's career will be the solace, the emotional, the figure of emotional support that he was in Victoria after David Hooks died, where he had the toughest task in the sport in the country at that point in time to try to steer that team through not just the immediate aftermath but the subsequent years. So I think he's earned a lot of respect. You know, every career ends somewhere. Whether he gets a gig somewhere else, who knows? But also, if you're coming up to 70, it might not be the worst time to look at what you've done and have a long sit in the chair on your porch and think about something else.
Yeah, not if you're an American politician, you're just getting started.
No, yeah,
that's
true.
A whole other conversation. How the fuck
got
are they still
25
hosting
years
the
to
Olympics,
go.
by the way? How's the IOC not stripped LA of the games? Like, someone's got to.
Since when has the IOC ever done anything on principle?
Well, I don't know. I just sort of feel like this is one of those ones that I'm just absolutely staggered that that's not part of this from a sport perspective. That's not part of it right now. Like, America should not be hosting an Olympic Games in 2 years' time. It just should not be happening.
It genuinely
we'll be there
won't.
if they are.
They shouldn't. They shouldn't be hosting a World Cup.
Well,
but they're
that'll
going to be hosting that.
I suppose that'll be the.
Yeah,
that'll be the trigger, won't it? The Football World Cup will be the trigger if that's a shambles, but it probably won't be because America put on great sporting events, right? But this is where anyway.
But it depends if they're trying to beat up and arrest the teams who are playing or the travelling supporters. I mean, there won't be any travelling supporters. You know, if you're coming from any of the 150 countries that they've decided they don't like, or 180 or whatever it is, then why would you risk it? Why would you travel to the US to try to watch a game? I can't see many doing it.
To think how that country, the reputation of that country has diminished in our lifetimes. Anyway, lastly, on appointments, I should note that Richard Holdsworth's finishing up as the cricket boss at Cricket Island after 15 years in senior cricket roles, a major contributor to that Irish success story en route to full membership and beyond. So that's all ahead of Sarah Keane taking over as the full-time chief executive next month. So we will do our very best to get Sarah Keane on the final word later this year. Maybe we'll give her a few months to get her feet under the desk before we start asking all the tough questions. But we've always had a great relationship with Cricket Island and letting us look under the hood, and I'm sure that will continue. But well played to Richard Holdsworth, who, over a long period of time, there'll be people who love him and people that loathe him. That's the nature of the job when you're an administrator, but clearly has a long period of service that is one that he should be proud of. And before we finish up the show today, Jeff, another tournament that's been going on for quite a while now, the Under-19 World Cup, Men's World Cup. I feel weird calling it the Men's World Cup when they're 19. It feels like a Boys World Cup, but you know what I'm trying to say. India beat Pakistan just when Pakistan were putting out that statement yesterday about the 20-over World Cup. So it's Australia undefeated playing England and Afghanistan playing India. They've all flown through their Super 6 stage. So, Afghanistan, if they knock off India, that would be a big deal. And again, reaching, the very end of a global tournament as they did in the T20s a couple of years ago. Yeah, on the charge still. So, this T20 World Cup is the ultimate proof of that on the field, to show whether, they're in that group, as you say, with a couple of other full member countries. They've got to knock one of those off and go through to the next stage and do some damage there. All right, Jeff, I believe that's the end of our show. A final thank you to the Zeus team and everything they've done with us so far, and hopefully it's a sign of what will come in the future. To Maurice Blackburn, our principal partner on the show week in, week out, we love yous. To all of our patrons, patreon.com/thefinalword. Sign up there. Our Storytime app last week was a belter if you've not listened to it. That's where you have the chance to win your slab of Stomping Ground beer. It's very easy. You become a patron or you up your patron pledge as it is, and you're in the running to win. Jeff will randomise his spreadsheet. And there'll be one of two people pulled out of the hat to win a slab or a case rather of Stomping Ground each week, which of course make the Final Word beers. More about that, but patreon.com/thefinalword to help Jeff and I keep doing what we're doing. All of the interviews, thank you for the feedback on the interview with Tawanda Mieye last week. I like when we get young players who are almost certainly going to play international cricket to talk to us beforehand, and we can make them one of our own, and I'm sure Tawanda will be one of those. And to everybody else who listens and provides feedback and gives reviews and nice, kind reviews on Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you listen to your shows. All of them are seen, all of them are appreciated, and we are grateful that we can keep making this show in the independent way that we do, which reflects the kind of editorial tone that we took in the first 20 minutes of this show, which probably wouldn't be possible if we were doing this in a non-independent way, if you like. We can call it as we see it.
That's it. That's the idea. And yeah, send it to someone. If you like the show, send it to someone who doesn't listen to it and say, listen to this, you idiot. You're missing out. That's it. More cricket nuffies. We want them. Bring them through our doors. It's been the final word. We will be back pretty soon, because we're always back pretty soon. There's always something coming up. T20 World Cup starts in a few days and a few things before then. Jeff Lemon, Adam Collins. See you later.
Bye.